Thank you. Certainly good to be here, and I'd like to just briefly give you an overview of the Australian identification system, or as we call it, the it's not coming up here. There we go, thank you. As we call it, the National Identification System, or the NLIS. So what I thought I'd do with this particular presentation is explain why we've done it, but also give you an insight into some of the bigger problems that we've had to overcome. Because in Australia, it's legislated. If you have any animal, any livestock on your place, specifically cattle, and they move from your place, they must be electronically identified. And it's non-negotiable. There will be no argument. If they're not electronically identified, whoever is the responsible person will be in trouble. And as you can imagine, Australians have a reputation for not liking authority, and so it's been an entertaining moment. But the main reason why we've had to go down the road of electronic identification, and as Sven just pointed out, we have to be extremely organised with it, is because the risk for Australia is massive if we don't have an electronic identification system. So these are our four crucial reasons as to why we electronically identify: exotic disease control, food safety, endemic disease control, market access, and remembering that Australia exports over 60% of its beef production. And what that means is if we get a disease in Australia, we cannot eat the meat we've got. And in that instance, the country itself will go bankrupt. And so the country believed that it's an investment that had to be spent. To use a common term that we use over in Australia is we believe that our national identification system is an insurance policy. So that if everything goes bad, we know how to rapidly, and we have the ability to rapidly work out where cattle have moved and what animals could potentially be infected. Just a very, very brief history here. We started in 1999. I have had the unfortunate experience of being with it since it started. So I was in the first abattoir. Back then I was working in the abattoir industry, and my abattoir was the first abattoir to implement a full RFID system. And back then the issues were chemical residue detections and HGB freedom, and the issues got so difficult to try and manage using a paper-based system that eventually certain people took a very hard line, and to be quite honest with you, I think to have any successful identification system in any country, you need people who are prepared to make very hard decisions, to be very unpopular for some time, as people understand the importance of having a system that is accurate and that works. So since 2002, it's been a mandatory system. So we're coming into our 10-year anniversary for a full national mandatory system. And we believe it is now a mature system. And the reason why we believe it's been very successful is because we've seen it as a partnership or a relationship between the government and the industry. We don't believe you're going to get things done by belting people over the head with a stick. That time certainly does come, but we believe that you've got to form a relationship and assist people, come alongside them, and whether it's the farmer or whether it's the sale yard or auction market or the abattoir, you come alongside them and explain to them the importance of electronic identification, why it needs to be done, how it needs to be done, so that they can walk with you down that road. We found that if you go in and just make rules without any reason, people get very frustrated and they fight you on it. Whereas if you can adequately communicate the need for this, then they become a partner with you, and it's worked. So in a sense, to describe our system, everything is about location. The number one issue we need to know is where did the animal come from. So our system is based, first of all, on what we call a property identification code, PIC. And then the electronic tags are registered to that property. To be quite brutally honest, we don't care who the owner is. We want to know where that animal was. That's what we want to know, because in the disease outbreak, it's of no interest to us to know that Sven Huther was the owner of those animals. We want to know where was those animals on this particular date, what was the wind direction on that particular date, how long was the wind blowing that day, what farms would come into effect based on those wind speeds, and we need to know it now. And so that's how we built our system. So PICS, as you can see, are linked to land. The focus is pretty poor on these things. So yeah, the PICS are linked to land. And then the NLIS tags, okay, they are then linked to the parcel of land. So you don't get a tag and it's registered to your name. Your tag is registered to your property identification code. Again, and I can't emphasize this enough, a successful identification system is based around a location because it's about traceability. It's not about ownership. And when I say that, I'm careful when I say this, in the livestock industry. So I want to emphasize that. These are the NLIS tags. Basically, we have two colours, white or orange. So when the animal's born, before it moves off its property, it must be tagged with a white tag. And then the orange tag is for animals that generally have had tags ripped out. So if you have brought an animal in, the tag has been ripped out, you cannot put a white tag saying that this animal was born on your property, because it wasn't. You must put an orange tag. So in the case of a disease outbreak, we know that the orange tags are immediately suspect. So, and the farmers have been very helpful in complying with that. And as you can imagine, we see less and less and less and less of the orange tags, but it is a situation that we do need to keep an eye on. So how does it work? Basically, as the NLIS tags are purchased, it goes to the national database saying these tags are on this property. As the movements are made between producers and auction markets or sale yards and abattoirs, at each of these points, the information goes back to the national database. And a lot of these systems today are automated systems, so it happens in some instances without people even realising it's occurred. And you just have one person saying these cattle have come from this property and they're now going to this property. Look, I'm going to be honest too, that has been a huge amount of work. I know I've kind of rushed over it in a simple sense, but it is a massive amount of work ensuring that people understand the value of providing information, providing correct information. And being in it for so long, I'm incredibly encouraged when I get a phone call from a farmer extremely angry because someone took 2 days to transfer the RFIDs to his property identification code. To me, that is a fantastic success. I love those phone calls because here's someone that's 85 years old following up an electronic identification system. And when I hear that, to me, the thousands of hours I've put into this job makes it all worth it all. Currently, as we speak, there's about 90,000 to 120,000 movements per day on our national database. And 99.5% of these are done within 24 hours, like completely processed. The ones that take longer are usually people like myself conducting investigations. And I'm pretty sure that the people we're investigating hope that we never get the results, but that's basically how it works. So, you know, this is where the rubber meets the road. How quickly can we do it? Under this OIE requirements, we must be able to do that first section. All companion animals within 24 hours have to be traced over the last 30 days. So we can do that in 2 hours. So within 2 hours, we can get one animal and work out every animal that's come into contact with that particular animal over any specified period of time. It doesn't matter about the 30 days. We can do that within 2 hours. We have an exercise every year where we do a simulated disease outbreak. And because of the Australian cattle system, our last one was over 88 head. Within 2 hours, we determined that those 88 head came into contact with 88,000 head. Within 4 hours, we had the names and addresses and phone numbers and locations, aerial satellite maps, wind directions, and all that. And we had officers at those properties quarantining those properties. That's how successful the system is. And for Australia, that's crucial. Now, we've competed against other states that haven't gone down that particular road. And in one instance, and the country, I'll leave the country's name nameless, but it's 2012, and we did that exercise in 2008, and they're still looking. So it goes to show you that, you know, RFID, it works. It really works. what we're doing now is we're trying to make the system so that the general public can understand it. Because the farmer and the auction market and the abattoir, they can all understand it because they use it every single day. But when the minister goes to present to the public a particular issue, we want to be able for him to understand how it works. Sven brought up a very good point, is sometimes the people who are paying the money have no concept at all of how the system works. So a few of us have taken it very seriously in trying to get them to understand, and this is an example. We give them these pictures so they can actually say, that farm, these are the cattle that belong to that farm. In a disease outbreak, this is how they are linked. Those ones in the middle had the disease and it's affected those places. And so we've focused very strongly on that. Here's one of our visual map overlays. This is an actual disease outbreak that we had with, occasionally we get the anthrax disease through our state. In times past, it was very, very difficult, but with this new system, it's almost a non-event. We can track within minutes, and the properties are quarantined almost as fast as we can find them. And then we put a visual map overlay that goes out, also goes up to the national database, and all the abattoirs know within basically minutes of every single property that may be infected. And as the cattle are read on the slaughter floor or as they're read in the sale yards, they're immediately quarantined. And that's without any, it's all fully automatic, it's a very big, helpful tool. We also have timelines as well when we're trying to explain to people the importance of disease incubation periods. Again, linking all of that so they can see on a picture exactly what's occurred. And lastly, overcoming the obstacles. What are the biggest issues that we've had? Communication has been the biggest one. For people like myself that have been doing it for 14 years, some things I find quite simple, and it's ensuring that I understand what questions and concerns people have and address them on their level. Another thing, I very strongly believe this, it's important that people understand the technology, even if it's a basic understanding of the technology. It's important for them to understand the limitations of the technology. It's important for them to understand the benefits. They don't need to be experts on it, but just need to understand how it works. A lot of my work these days are with the police and in various investigation roles. And the number one, and I find it somewhat humorous, but the number one reason when we have a failure in any particular livestock sector where RFID ear tags have not been read, the number one reason is because the person responsible never turned the reader on. That is the number one reason. And I don't know, I've lost count of how many times I've gone down there and angry people, the system's stupid, it doesn't work, and you flick the switch. Oh, I forgot to do that. So, very frustrating. But that is still our number one reason to this day. People don't turn it on. And I don't know what it's like over here, but in Australia, if you don't turn things on, they don't work. So we're literally having to design systems that turn themselves on. So we've got PowerPoints that are on a timer, and regardless of the person involved, the system turns on. Another thing is effective compliance monitoring. It's a difficult side of RFID. If you're serious, if a country is deadly serious about an animal identification system, the hard side of it is compliance. You must enforce it. If you don't enforce it, then people aren't going to care. They'll do it if they feel like it, and if they don't feel like it, they're not going to do anything. The manufacturers must be policed. In our system, we have a manufacturer's code, not a country code, and one of those reasons is we have a very, very strict monitoring of that, constant. And so we don't believe you should make rules that you can't enforce. So if you can't enforce a particular part of the scheme, don't make the rule. And that way people feel that they're not quote-unquote silly rules. And so part of my role is ensuring that if new rules are going to come out about animal identification, that they're valid and that it's physically possible to investigate those situations. The situation where Australia finds itself now is the plateau factor. So, you know, we've been doing this massive climb into RFID, and right now I think we're plateauing out, everybody's cruising, and there's a little bit of apathy regarding the system, and it's my particular job to ensure that people don't stop trying. There's got to be a better way of doing things, and keeping them pushing it. And last thing, and I would encourage anybody that is involved in an identification system, the number one thing you must do is review, 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 and then when you're finished, review again. You can always do it better, always do it better. There's always better communication to be had. There's always another way to approach a situation. And in my role, I'm prepared every single minute of the day to admit I'm wrong, because someone may have come up with a better idea. And it's constantly reviewing things to make sure that if someone's worked out a better way of doing something, be humble enough to admit it and review it, implement it. If it works, roll it out. Let's make it happen. And the more industry sees someone recognising their particular ideas and implementing them, the more partners you've got in making this a success. And at the end of the day, a good system is government and industry working together hand in hand, knowing the rules, knowing the regulations, and working together to meet them, because at the end of the day, it's about keeping everyone in their jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.